Hey, so I am 1 week out from my next tournament, NTS Nordic Tabletop Showdown here in Denmark in Aalborg, and I've already covered this a little bit, but now the lists are out and I've done the meta research, so I'll do at least 2 videos. This one where I talk about the meta of NTS and what I'm seeing, and then I think I'll do one where I talk about some of the more interesting lists that are going. So let's do some NTS coverage here. I've of course made a PowerPoint, so I'm just going to get that for you. Here we go. The meta of NTS. Now, the NTS pack has a order dice cap of 20 order dice. It has a maximum of one multi-rocket launcher of any type and 1100 points, V3 all the way. And it has, there are some little changes to, for instance, how objectives are scored. They are running old style version 2 objectives, so not the sticky objectives of version 3. And I think that's just because this is the first major tournament in Denmark. It's the first GT style tournament of 2 days. So they didn't want to, have people both show up to a major tournament with where they're learning the rules still, and at the same time have to deal with these new rather weird objectives. So I think that's why they're doing that, and that's perfectly fine. So what nations are people taking? Oh, and by the way, how many people are we going? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. We're 22 players. 5 games, 2 days. So the most popular lists to take are Germany and Great Britain, 5 of each. So that's almost half the lists. The Soviets are in a weird 3rd place right now, because in version 2 they were immensely popular. I think in version 3 they're really good. Some other players of the competitive group here in Denmark thinks that they've become worse, but so there are only 3 Soviet and 3 American lists, which is again weird because I thought the Americans are really good. Rangers in version 3, really good, but nope. And then there are, weirdly enough, 2 Polish lists. One of them has Lancers, the other doesn't. So the Poles are back, and I'll talk a little bit about why that is. One of the reasons, I think, is because one of the players bringing the Polish is Lucas, who is from Poland, and he has been on a trip with his Polish for a while. He's not bringing that many. He's not bringing Lancers at all, I think. So it's an infantry Polish list, which is an interesting spin. I haven't seen that done before at all. So we shall see how well he does. And then we have the outsiders, the nations, where there's 1 of each. So we have 1 Hungary, 1 Finland, 1 Italy, and 1 Japan. Japan and Italy have been relegated to the 3rd tier here in version 3 until their army books come out. Japan really suffered because close combat has been nerfed so heavily. And Italy suffered because their case blue rules sort of went away, and all the nice new units they got went away. So, but Finland is, for me, maybe the best nation right now because of the insane discount that they get on their tanks, and that we can clearly see in the lists, the Finnish list being brought. So what builds are used here? Well, we have 10 lists that are bringing armor. So, or at least are armor heavy, have an armored platoon and are leaning into that. None of them are Death Stars. Well, there is one that's sort of the Death Star unit, but most of them just have multiple light tanks. So that is quite a lot of armor, and I think that's because we're already seeing that in version 3 tank platoons do well. And then we have 8 lists that are leaf blower, gunline, or camping lists. That is lists that will sit back, have you come to them, and just shoot you as you go. With a lot of LMGs, a lot of artillery platoons, or heavy platoons with mortars. So passive lists, and I think that's clever. I don't think it's very fun to play or play against necessarily, but it's really clever because we are already seeing that passive play is rewarded in version 3 unless we have enough terrain. So I'm hoping that the tables at NTS are cluttered. And then we have 5 lists that have multiple forward observers, or at least one. So forward observers is definitely also a thing. We're seeing gun lines, we're seeing armor, and we're seeing forward observers. Infantry is having a rough time of version 3 so far. We have 3 motorized or mechanized lists, which is going to be interesting to see how well they do. 2 assault lists, one of them being my own. So I am going back to what I started out with, my Gurkhas. Although I don't think I'm going to assault much. The Gurkhas are mainly there to threaten enemy infantry away so that the enemy doesn't move up into point blank range and shoot me out. So it's other elements of my list that's doing most of the heavy lifting here. And then we have one list that is Polish Lancer heavy, and that is definitely an assault list. We have so much MSU support, multiple small units, infantry teams. Most of the lists here are boosting out their order dice using AT rifles, light mortars, lots of officers, stock teams, all of that jazz, where you could get access to 1 or 2 infantry dudes for very, very cheap. The order dice spread, we have a spread of between 12 and 20. The 12 list is from one player who's playing Germans with the Death Star. And I think that's so low that you're going to feel it. You're going to lack the order dice coming out of the bag when you want them, I think, for that one player, which sucks. But, that is what it is. And 20, a lot of people, because there's a 20 order dice cap, a lot of people have tried to get up there in that range. I myself is sitting at 17, and when I saw the list, I started worrying a little bit that I may be low. But I'm gonna have to try it. So the most common thing that most people take is 20 order dice, reaching the cap, and 18 order dice is the average order dice for this tournament. My predictions. So what do I think is going to happen? Well, there's quite a lot. I know more than half of these players. There's a huge group of new players coming into V3, into the tournament scene here in Denmark, which is so goddamn cool. I freaking love it. But I don't know how well they are, how good they are. But I'm thinking, since they are new players, they're just coming into the tournament scene. For a lot of them, this is going to be their first or second major tournament. I don't think that they will compete on a level where they can actually shift the balance that much. So for all of these players, I have ranked them between 1 and 5, and I have ranked their lists between 1 and 5. If you go back and watch my videos in version 2, I did this, where a 1 is a bad list, a 2 is a thematic non-competitive list, a 3 is an average tournament list, a 4 is a tournament list that is so optimized that I think it could win tournaments, and a 5 is some of the top lists that we're seeing win international tournaments. And the same for the players. A 1 player is a completely new player who's playing his first games. Is a bad player, basically making bad decisions. A 2 is a non-competitive player. A 3 is an average tournament player. A 4 is someone who regularly ends up in the top 5 of tournaments. And a 5 is someone who regularly wins or ends up in the top 5 of international tournaments. So that's my ranking system, right? Explain for you new guys. And it's highly subjective, but it does give me something that I can predict outcomes from. So this is what I think will happen. We have 8 players who I think could end up in the top 5. And I know this is a lot, but looking down over lists and player ranking, I think all of these have a shot. So Michael Fie, he's the current reigning Danish champion, national champion. He's bringing 17 orderized Polish lancers and tankettes. I think he could do well. This is what he won the Danish national champion title with. He does this really well. So if he has a good day, he can have off days, like everyone can. And if he has an off day, he'll lose games. But if he has a good day, he will be very, very hard to beat with his lancers. So the question is, can he make the lancers work in V3? That is going to be an interesting one. Then we have Christian Lyngvad, who is, I think, number 2 right now in Denmark. He was also on the Danish national team at the 3-man World Team Championship, along with me and Michael. He's bringing 18 orderized mixed bag Brits, which is what he runs all the time. So it's straight down into his comfort zone. He knows how to do this. It's a good mix that he has. There's a little bit of armor, there's some artillery pieces, there are some veterans and SMGs, there is even some engineers with flamethrowers as well, so flamethrower teams. So it's perfect for Christian, this mixed bag here. He could also do well. Then we have Jan Petersen. Jan Petersen is, of course, a well-known international player as well. And he is, Jan, you bastard. He is basically copying what the Spanish team captain Achilles did at World Open War, where Achilles became the world champion in 3-man bolt action. Achilles had figured out that the Finns had a huge discount, and Jan is just more or less, it's a copy of Achilles' list. He's got 2 heavy tanks, or not heavy, it's T-28s, I believe, and then T-20s, bunch of T-20s. I think he has 10 or something. It's insane. So that's gonna be a problem. And if Jan, that list for me is a 5. Because Achilles has already won the world championship using that list. So for me, that is a 5 list, and that really boosts Jan up into the top bracket here, along with Michael Fie. I've marked these out because I think they have a slight edge compared to the rest. Then we have Benny, who has been on the Danish national team multiple times, is a very good competitive player, and is maybe the best list builder in Denmark. He was the one who taught me how to build lists. And he is bringing 20 order dice Hungarians into gun line. And the cool thing here is, of course, with the Hungarian national special rules, you can't really outflank against him. So he's just going to sit there and have you come at him and shoot you to bits as you go. Which is a really, really nasty tactic, and one that Benny is very comfortable with. Then we have Torben Davidsen, who has been with us. He fought on the Dutch national team at World Open War. He's a new competitive player, but he's really doing well, and he is definitely shooting for the top brackets every single time. He is bringing his Soviets, which he also did to World Open War, 19 order dice, scouts, tanks, T-60 tanks, and a lot of scouts just pushing up, grabbing that midfield early on. And then, of course, my 17 order dice Gurkhas, 2 forward artillery observers, and 4 armored fighting vehicles. My main worry is that I'm low on order dice, and I may feel this during the weekend. So we shall see how it goes. And then we have Thor. Thor is a very young and new competitive Danish player. He's been doing really well in tournament. He sort of smashed into the Danish tournament scene last spring, and he is bringing 20 orderized German mechanized and tanks, which I think for someone who's bringing that combination is where you need to be orderized wise. Is it enough to bring him into the top bracket? I think it could be. We shall see. And then we have Torben K, who is bringing 19 orderized forward artillery observers, 2 I think, or at least 1, and armor, and he's bringing his Brits. Again, something he's very comfortable with. Torben is not a top player normally, but the list is really, really, really good. So that is going to be my predictions. I think that we're going to see the winner in one of the 3 people I picked out in bold, but I think we could easily see any one of these go and win the tournament and at least end up in top 5. So what are my main takeaways for this? Well, I think there's some lessons we can learn. Autocannons are everywhere. They're so popular. I think I may need to just do videos, tactical videos on autocannons, because they are everywhere. Everyone's bringing them. Whether it is the infantry version, I have a couple of 3D prints standing right here, ready to be painted. Or it is the version on armored fighting vehicles, like I have here on my Humber. Everyone's bringing autocannons. They're just so good, this version 3. Auto die spamming is also so easy that it's fairly easy to end up in very high auto dice counts. So that's just, it will always happen. You'll get a lot more auto dice in a V3 army than you did in a V2 army. And that's because the small units are now very useful and you can get so many of them. We also can clearly see that Finnish armor is seriously underpriced. Paying 16 points for an unreliable T20 when a Soviet player plays 46 points. That is insane. That is not okay. So Finnish armor needs to be priced right, and it is not right now. So yeah, that's a problem. And there are so many observers, air observers, artillery observers everywhere. So that may also be a problem for the future. And there are some open questions. One is still an open question for me. We've seen a couple of tournaments and we haven't seen anyone do well. Can we make Death Star so a medium to a heavy tank or a large heavy veteran infantry unit tooled up with gear, can they work? They didn't in V2, but we are waiting to see if they can in V3. I have seen some players play around with veteran heavy tanks or medium tanks and trying to make that work, and there is an argument to be had for that because most players are not bringing heavy guns to deal with them. We're also going to see if soft skin vehicles can make it, because a lot of players here are bringing, or not a lot, but some players are bringing motorized, and that's soft skinned, right? So we shall see if those soft skin vehicles can make it, or if those lucky sixes are going to just wipe them off the board every single time. Then we shall have to see if armor will dominate the games, if armor is the thing that wins you tournaments now. We sort of saw that in World Open War, but then in Santiago, in Chile, it didn't really pan out that way. So we're still on the fence about that one, and I think we can tell a lot from this tournament once it is over. And then the other possibility is camping or gun lining. That could also dominate, and we don't know yet whether or not that happens. I think, personally, I still think that it's got a lot to do with the tables. We saw gun lining absolutely winning and dominating the last Juggernaut tournament. So, and I think that's because their tables were simply too open, but I wasn't there, so I can't really tell. but I think that could be part of it. But we shall see with this tournament what happens, and what we can learn about that. So thank you all for tuning in. Thank you especially to Michael Eistrup and Søren Rullev, the two organizers, EOs and TOs of this tournament. I'm very much looking forward to starting a very busy spring and year for myself, tournament-wise. I'm going to so many things, but I like it. So that's what I do. And yeah, thank you all for tuning in. I will see you in the next video. Cheers.